So I'm going to give you like this a story. So one day during the war, my grandmom comes back. She used to leave to go get to go like find a food like rice and beans. She should be gone for like half a day just to find a handful of rice and beans
Wow.
for 5 people.
For
Literally.
5 people.
Yeah. And that was our food for like 3 or 4 weeks. And
Wow.
one day she came back and she walked in, going towards the kitchen, and she fell. No one touched her or anything. She fell. And immediately everybody thought there was a bullet that went through the wall that hit her because that was like
Oh.
common. That was very common.
Turn this up. Turn this up.
Your professional development is one of the keys to your career success. When you combine your desire to grow with actionable steps, your journey to success becomes an incredible reality.
Hi, I'm Paul Ferrandi, aka IncrediPaul, and welcome to IncrediPaul Leadership, where we learn how to become the most incredible versions of ourselves by learning from each other. First off, if you're listening to this episode, you can also watch it on YouTube. But regardless if you're listening or watching this episode, really appreciate your support. Today, I have the honor of having Archie Karpeh on the show. Hopefully I said your name right. He is,
Yes, you did.
there we go.
Fantastic. You did
He is
fantastic.
he's the CEO of MelaninMD. MelaninMD, a health technology company focusing on healthcare disparities for people of color with deep ties to University of Minnesota Nanotechnology Center. Archie is introducing new NASA-based technology, I'm sure we'll get into that, to enhance IV placement, revolutionizing medical procedures and patient care. So that was a little bit about you, Archie. How about you introduce yourself the way you would do it?
Yeah. So my name is Archie, like Paul said. I am. I have a long history, I guess, but
Just dive in.
yeah, I am a person who grew up in the war zone in West Africa. I went through all that refugee camp for 2 years. Went to America, and then my dad uh, that like adapted me and discovered I could play football. And then my life changed from there, just coming from like Africa and going through all the stuff that I actually went through, and then coming to America and making the best out of that opportunity. I took advantage of the idea, that I was good at playing soccer, not American football, but my football.
the real
Not
football.
Yeah, the real football.
Yeah.
Exactly. Let's just clarify that part.
It's like, I mean, I say
Yeah.
soccer being in the U.S., but I was born in West Africa. I was born in Nigeria, so I know.
Okay, so then you know
I
exactly
know.
what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Mhm.
So being in the US, I end up doing well at football. I was recruited by IMG Academy in Bradenton, which the top youth athlete in the world goes there. And then my life changed. I got picked up by a team in Italy. I moved to Europe, and then my life just completely changed.
So, what age were you picked up by this team in Italy?
So they picked me up. The first interaction happened around when I was like 16.
Okay.
Yeah, but IMG picked me up when I was 13.
Wow.
So I moved to America when I was 10. Let me just give you like a little bit of the timeline. I moved when I was 10, and then by 11, 12 years old, the buzz was happening. I was on TV and people was talking about this kid from Minneapolis. I wasn't from Minneapolis, but it's just because I moved there, so apparently I was from there, whatever. But my family, my family was there. I had two incredible family that actually took me in. Rick Van Horn, he and his wife Suzanne Van Horn, and Bruce Zallinger, he and his wife Beth. And I just mowed with like the family, and we went through everything together. But then I left when I was 13. I was just like, I went to Florida. And then my life changed. So anyway, so you could say I'm a footballer, a visionary. I think every problem have a solution. I've always think that. I'm a researcher. I love chemistry, as you can probably see from my background. And I kept those two things in terms of football and science, I kept those two things up front. And, I went to med school. I did some incredible research at the University of Minnesota. So, yeah. And then I just make the best out of what was given to me based on the fact that I experienced something horrible from when I was 0 all the way to I was 10. And the moment I stepped forward on America's soil, I was like, there's nothing here I can't do. So I just took advantage of it and I ran with it. What you were born into and what you experience, you are able to change it. I think everything is just a choice. And perhaps I'm a little bit harsh because I believe if I went through all those things and I was born through it, if that was my baseline, and to see who I am now, I don't have that room for somebody to say, "Oh, this is what I learned, so this is what I'm going to keep doing." Like, no, you can change it. It's hard, not easy. A lot of therapy, which is massively important, especially for our culture. Yes. For our culture, like Black and brown people, we're not really accepting to it, which is kind of fascinating because if you think about it. Sorry, I'm taking over your whole thing. I feel like
no, keep talking.
If you actually think about it, therapy is in our culture. So if you kind of like narrow it down, in the culture in Africa, when something happened in the family, whatever, who do you go to? The elders. And what do? They talk to you about the problem. So for some reason, we stepped away from that idea. And because we put this fancy word on something, therapy, they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. That means I'm weak. That means all these. It's like, no, it's just the same thing. You're talking to people who have perhaps more knowledge than you do, or maybe they don't have more knowledge. You just have a different point of view.
Yes.
And those things can be massively helpful, So that's just my thing. I used to be one of those people that was against it, of course, when I was younger. Then I realized I was like, okay, there are places I don't know. And I need to navigate those places and those spaces, whatever. And talking to those people, in my opinion, was massively helpful. I still do it up to now. I just do it because I think it's helpful. I think everybody should have one. That's just what I'm saying. Yeah. Everybody should build one. Hire one, whatever.
If anyone gets anything from what you just said, and I totally agree, because I was been reacquainted with therapy over the last several months, just with stuff that I've gone through recently.
Right.
But I think and I'm glad you said that, because I think especially in the Black and brown culture, there's still a stigma around it, especially for Black men. I think for females in general and Black females, it's more accepted, but Black men,
it's just like, no, you can't do that. Why would you ever talk about your feelings? But it's like, so then what do you do with it? You're going to feel it. It's like, what do you do with it? So, so I think now that the conversations is out there, I think people like you that have this platform that reaching younger people and broader people, I think it is just massive to make sure these things are not pushed aside, that these things are up front, because if you're able to navigate those spots with someone that actually know a bit more than you ever, then you can focus on like the stuff that you want to do, your education, your relationship, your goals, your morals, and all those things becomes a lot more clear if your mind is able to navigate like the anger, the sadness, the abandonment, or the relationship breakup, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So I do things that those things are like massive. And I have family members that are therapists and all those things. And I still didn't do it at first. I was like, I'm not doing it. Like, I'm not doing that. I'm not your patient, but I think it has held on to those things for a long time. They all sort of compound, it's like you're walking around picking up things, right? There are these bag of perhaps trauma that you are born with, passed down, but then life happens and you keep adding more bag. You keep adding and adding and adding. All of a sudden you have to figure out, how do I get rid of it? Or how do I figure out how to carry it in a healthy way, at least, So anyhow, I'm actually interesting. I didn't think we were going to jump into mental health right away, but I do fancy it.
No, I think it's a good topic.
I do fancy it.
Yeah, no, it's something I've been talking more about, because I realize that especially in our community, especially Black males, we don't talk a lot about it. And it's not something I will say, like, growing up, I just never thought about it. So I didn't think I needed it. The last few years, I've been more open to it. And then last year I started and then been more intentional and consistent with this year. And I think even I'm just going to continue doing it because I realize I see the value in it because there's things.
Massive.
Yeah. Because there's things I didn't even realize that I didn't have to put up with or deal with. I just thought that's the way it was. That's the way it was supposed to be. Right. And through therapy, I'm able to say like, no, I can navigate this. I can not do all these things. Like a lot of the stuff that I was navigating was more on the relationship side and codependency and like not putting myself first. And
massive, huge. Especially when you like grow up in like African culture. You know, if you grew up with like your mom or you grew up with like your grandmom and you see those caregiver putting themselves not second or third or fourth, it's like the very last or whatever. Yes. So then that's what you see. So you, if you, at least for me, seeing that growing up, because my grandmom raised me, like the way my grandmom showed love when I was little, it is the most profound thing I've seen. So that's how you just show love to everybody and you expect them to do it to you, right? So I'm going to give you like this a story. So one day during the war, my grandmom comes back. She used to leave to go get to go like find a food like rice and beans. She should be gone for like half a day just to find a handful of rice and beans.
Wow.
For 5 people. Literally.
5 people.
Yeah. And that was our food for like 3 or 4 weeks. And one day she came back and she walked in, going towards the kitchen, and she fell. No one touched her or anything. She fell. And immediately everybody thought there was a bullet that went through the wall. I hate her because that was like common. That was very common. If you put your head up, that's the first thing that happened. So like everybody thought that. But she felt, she hit her head. And all the family members rushed over to her. And there was this little space. It was a very interesting thing that happened because we were supposed to be on the ground, laying down. You're not supposed to get up because bullets are going everywhere, right? There was this little space between everybody's leg. And I could see her eyes looking at me. The white part of her eyes, it was the most horrifying thing. The person who took care of me and done all these things, I'm looking at them and I'm like, she's definitely gone. She already got shot or whatever. But they like touch her face, they pour water on her, they check her for any blood. No, she's not bleeding. So they like, she kind of fainted. So they check her face or whatever, and then they got her up, she sat down and she just hung over like this. I remember one of my uncle was saying, you have to eat to have the energy to go find food for these kids.
Wow.
Think about that. That hunt of rice and beans that she was going to like look for was going to feed us for 3 weeks. That means she haven't ate all those times. And she was walking, dodging bullets, dodging bombs to go find that. And I remember when like, I think it was like a few days or like a week after things felt better and she was better or whatever. I remember asking her, I was like, why would you do that? And now, this is the beautiful thing, and this is the bad thing. I wish you would have told me something different. She said to me, she just turned to me, a very calm, thick African accent, and she said, when you love people, you give up yourself. That's true. But the part about that was bad. If you find somebody that you love that don't see you that way, all you do is give up yourself all the time. I wish she would say, if you love somebody who love you the same way, boom, that would have clicked. For me, a lot of my relationship, I guess, back with not like romantic relationship, but just people like friends and family, whatever.
Yeah.
That wasn't the way people saw me. It was just like, he does these things. He's this kind person. Therefore, I can use that when it's convenient. And that I had to relearn it or unlearn that part of it. Yes. So therapy, exactly.
Is so key.
I had to unlearn that part. Or I kept the part that was good. Then I had to find the thing that made me feel like that other person is worthy of that. not just give it to everybody because it was like this buffet or whatever. So that's actually where therapy started for me, because I was like, I'm holding people to this standard and they're not reaching the standard, and I am getting disappointed, but I'm giving them so much of me. And I remember my therapist was just like, well, tell me, how did you get to this point? So I had to walk back to that incident. And she was like, I don't think that's a bad thing that you learn. I just think you need to figure out who's worthy of that, who's giving it to you yourself. So not putting yourself last or third. Black women do that all the time because that's just what we were born into. Some Black men that like I know do that. They give up themselves because that's what they were born into. So it's like just navigating this point or whatever and trying to balance those things is massive, absolutely massive.
Yeah, no, that's wow. That story is heavy, but it definitely resonates. And I'm sure that it resonates with me. And I'm sure there's a lot of people listening as well, but depending on how you were raised or even just navigating, whether it's your career or life, a lot of times you feel like you have to do all these things to be seen or to be acknowledged.
To be heard.
Yeah, to be heard. I think I love social media. I'm on it all the time, but I feel like that's a lot of the things with social media is that we're doing all these things because we want that.
You have this generation of people with happy picture and sad life. I mean, everybody having this selfie of this and this selfie of that. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I think it is good to tap into the time that you're happy. But I always ask myself, happy for who? Like, am I happy because I want somebody else to see me, to them, so I can feel like what is it I'm happy for? So I think just looking at those, don't get me wrong. I think people should have social media because you can keep up with people's lives. Yes, your friends and your loved ones, whatever, you should keep with their life. But if it becomes consuming in the sense that whatever you do, you must share, then you have to ask yourself, like, is it for me or is it for other people? So that's just my point. Also, maybe because I'm old. I don't know.
I don't know. I think it's just a perspective, and I think that's part of the things from this podcast. And like I was able to learn from people who were further along the line for me growing up. So to just understand that some of the things that we think really matter don't matter in the long run. Like how many people remember the people who were really famous on social media when it first started, or those famous YouTubers, or like even actresses, like all that stuff passes after a while. Even companies too. Like it's very hard to see the companies that are in the top 10, 15 in the Fortune 500 list now versus 30 years ago. Not the same companies.
Right.
So
I agree.
So yeah, it's just that perspective. But yeah, it's interesting that we got right into it. But I think that's a conversation that would needed to happen, because it is something just to understand that, especially with therapy, I think, and I had a previous guest talked about it, that just outsourcing, like if you're an entrepreneur, outsourcing your mental health to a professional instead of trying to do it on your own, because you can't. If you're an entrepreneur,
if you're a leader of anything you're doing, if you have a job, I don't know, if you whatever it is you're doing, I think talking to somebody who is a professional, and like nowadays, it's actually a lot more easy to actually find people. They have all these other platforms online. You can text people, whatever, when you're like feeling some type of way. Like think about it, right? Some of the highest group of people who have 4 or 5 jobs are in our community. If you are balancing 2, 3 jobs, you need somebody to talk to. If your husband or your girlfriend or your wife is doing the same thing, you guys don't have that time to dump your thing on like each other. So you go talk to somebody, refresh yourself, and then you have that part where you're healed or whatever, or talked about, and you're able to talk to your person. Now, don't get me wrong, I am 100% with people that say, yeah, it's hard. Yeah, you go into talking to people about my problem, it's a little weird. I hear you. I was also there. I was in the same.
I was too.
I was in the same thing. I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm way too African to do this. I'm French. I don't like that part. I was like, I don't like any of that stuff.
Africans
I was like,
this.
I'm way too African to do that or whatever. But like African is like what I was in Africa for like 10 years. And I call myself, that's how I call myself at the time. It doesn't matter where I live. In Europe, wherever it is, I'm African. That's how it is, where I was born. But it's like, that idea of like, oh, you can't talk to a person because it makes you weak, or it demasculinate you. Like that's just, I don't know who came up with some mental saying like that.
I don't know.
Yeah. So I think the people who can benefit from it the most it's everybody. Everybody can benefit from it. Not one person is, more likely to. I think everybody can. Even if you're in a relationship that's healthy.
Yeah.
Or if you're healthy, everything is fine. You should. Because it's the same reason why you have insurance. You have insurance, not because you think you're going to get in an accident. You have insurance just in case you get in an accident. Then you can use it. But if you know you have it sometime, you kind of use it. You go and check, you go and check things out. You make sure your car is okay. You make sure things are, so that's just my thing. I think everybody need to have some sort of professional that they can talk to, young or old, doesn't matter. Somebody, a professional that is completely neutral away from your everyday world, from your family, not your grandmom because she might take your side, not your best mate because he might take your side. Now, somebody that would tell you something, yes, agree with you, but also be honest with you. Like maybe look at it this way. Especially somebody from a different culture, because they'll have a different viewpoint, So that's just my view on it.
No, I definitely agree with that. Just getting the professional help and the things you need. But I definitely want to, because we dove into therapy and that's great and it's important. I would definitely want to talk about what you're doing with MelaninMD as well, because it is incredible. I just want to learn more about how that started and what you're doing with it right now.
Yeah. So how the MelaninMD started, I'm going to go from the very beginning, which will make it a little bit crazy. So first, I'll tell you how I fell in love with science. I fell in love with science, complete accident. Like it wasn't something that's supposed to happen until I was a refugee in Ghana. There was a Liberian refugee camp there. I was like 8 years old. It's called Bujuburan Refugee Camp. I think it's changed now. But I remember one day I'm walking and it's bloody hot, mate. Absolutely scorching. Like just hot. Okay. So everybody trying to find like a shade by the house or whatever. So I'm walking and I came across, I was trying to grab something to put over my head, kind of like that's how hot it was. I just wanted to cover my head with something. And there was this part of this magazine, paper that was just cut off. It was like slanted cut. One part of it was my favorite club, Manchester United. Okay. So I was like, yeah, I know. We're going to go there. Are we? I'm sure you're like an Arsenal fan, aren't you? Are you an Arsenal fan?
No, I actually like Man U because I have
perfect.
I have cousins in Manchester. So yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, brilliant. So I am I like pick up this paper and it was talking about like a match that happened, and it was talking about like David Beckham and like all the things that he did or whatever, and I was like, oh great. But then the paper was slanted, it was cut. So I was like, well, what's the rest of it? So I flipped it over to kind of figure out what's on the backside. On the backside, mind you, for you listener out there that are non-African, some African can be a little bit dramatic, so maybe this is why. On the backside, there was this heading that was a bit cut off. It says the American put a battery in some president's heart from Africa. Well, first of all, my grandmom told me do not touch battery because they have acid in it. You could die, all those things. So I was like, how did the American put a battery in someone's heart and they're walking? And I was like, what? That just blew my mind.
Wow.
And I was a little bit confused. So I took the paper. My grandma didn't really knew how to read at this time. So I ran back to our place and I was like, I have to read this to you. And she was like, I don't want to read the stupid thing about the football. I'm like, no, just this side of football. The other side is different. And then I end up reading it to her, and she goes, Arch. And I was like, well, and she goes, that makes no sense. Nobody pulled battery in anyways. So I'm arguing with her. I'm like, but it said it right here. Like it says battery right here. And I think it was about uncle or whatever. He and her were talking. And then she goes, oh, it's a little thing. And then he was like, pacemaker. They put a pacemaker. So I was like, what's a pacemaker? And she goes, I don't know. You have to. You don't want to read the stupid paper that you found. You go out and figure it out. So for me, that was like my task. I had to go figure out what this pacemaker for. Anyway, I didn't really figure it out. But I ended up coming to America 2 years after that. And my mind was just like, whatever this thing is, I want to know what this thing is. And like also prior to that, when I was shot, the doctors that came from the mercy ship to help people, whatever, and it was actually interesting. He said a few words that my English wasn't at the level to understand well, but he said he's a doctor. He helped people, and he was from Texas. I didn't know what Texas was. I didn't know what that was. He just said this, but he came for a week every day, and he would just say this, and he would give me like a Snicker bar, like this candy bar, because it was so painful. My leg was being talked about being like amputated because it was so infected.
Wow.
It's horrible. Yeah. So that sparked me in the idea that I want to help people. Whatever he did, that was what I wanted to do. Anyhow. But so that was my first incident that happened. Then on the refugee camp that happened. Okay. Then I went to the US. Things are great. Football happened. I got discovered, and I was like, peace, mate. I didn't think about that at all. I just went the football route. While I was on the football route, Bruce's wife, Beth, was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer.
Mm-hmm.
I was told about it. I think they kind of kept it from us kids because they didn't want the kids to freak out and be worried about it. So they kind of kept it, which was nice. But I was told she was sick. I didn't really know what sick was. And then a few months after, I was just called by one of my friends. He said she died. And I was like, but she was just sick. This is America. When you're sick, you go to hospital, you're fine. Wow. People don't die in America. This is the shiny city on top of the hill.
Yeah.
No one dies there. This is mental. Now, mind you, I'm young, so I don't know about those things ever. And I remember getting that call. And one thing I learned from the war, good thing, it's kind of weird to think that. One good thing that I learned from the war, a very simple concept. Whatever that come after the people you love, you go after it. Whatever, whoever come after the people you love, you go after it with everything you have. You may not succeed, but you put every ounce of energy in you after that idea. So for me, that was logical. I went straight to the library on campus. I started to look for stuff. I remember my teacher, he was like, you're late for class. And I'm like, something happened. And he came and I just started sobbing. I didn't cry. That was like my first time crying or whatever. And he was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. You don't have to go to class. But he just thought it was about the school stuff. I'm like, no. And I explained to him what happened. And he goes, you have a nanoparticle textbook in your hand. And I'm like, I don't know. I want to read this book. Because it was just talking about like small particle. And in my head, I was like, if cells is small, you need something small to actually target it.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, I'm like 16, 15 years old, okay, at this time. So he's like, okay, I'm going to let you sit down and read for a bit, but you have to come to class after, okay? You do have to come. Okay. So he let me sit down and he goes to class. I read enough of it. I close it. I go to class. For like, I would say almost a year or close to a year. I went to the library reading that textbook only. I read nothing else, just the textbook. This is the thing about the universe or God. This is my belief. Nobody have to take this at all. I believe when the universe or God want you to get on the path, he, she, they, whatever you want to call them, put you on the path no matter what it is. If you step off that path, it will do whatever it takes to put you back on that path. If your destiny and your goal for the universe and your purpose is on that path and you step up and you go play hockey or baseball, whatever, it will find a way. You will break your leg. You will lose your scholarship. Whatever it is to get back on that path will happen. Right. So I read the stuff. The Europe thing happened. I moved to Europe, whatever. I'm living all these places in Germany and France and England or whatever, and Italy. Yeah, I'm moving all these places, whatever. But that was just still in my head. I'm like, that's what I want to do. But everything else was, like actually still happening. And I was like, I need to go to university. I have to go to university. So Coach Powell came to me from Eli University, which is a private school in North Carolina. He was like, hey, we know a bunch of people are out there chasing you to come to school for free. We will do whatever it takes to come here. We haven't won anything. We want to bring like a winning team. It's super interesting. He flew to my parents to talk to them. He was like, whatever it takes to like bring Archie, I would do it. But by this time he knew I had 27 Division I 4I. 27. Yeah. 4I. I just had to pick. This is how I pick my school. We took a map of the US. I took a pen. I drew a line across the map and I say, everything up north is cold. I don't want it. Anything south, I want. Okay. And a bunch of my mates from the national team that what I wanted to go to school was going to like Duke, UNC, Wake Forest. Okay. So Eli was going to be in that same area playing those people. So I was like, competition, mate. I want to go with this guy because I want to play against my own guy. Anyways, long story short, I went to Elon. I studied psychology and finance. Nothing to do with my science path that I wanted to do. Because first I was like, whenever I experienced during the war, I need to try to figure that out if I can pursue anything else. And psychology, of course, there's all these things you have to learn about yourself and all these research that you go on. So I was just embedded in it. And for sure, for me, I was like, money. I want to understand how money works. I don't want to just be floating in the world and, you have money, you lose it, whatever. Anyways. Yeah. So that was my thing. So I went to school at Elon. I was there for 4 years. We won 3 championships. I had 3 rings. Boom. Job done. Clap. Move to Europe. But it was just in my mind still. What was what was happening. And then Rick, who was like closest to me, got diagnosed with cancer, stage 4, colon cancer, just like Bev. Wow. Now, tell me, what's the chance of that happening with everybody else close to you? 2 separate family. Yeah. The closest people in the family is getting diagnosed like that. So I was like, you know what? God is trying to make me do whatever it is that he wants me to do. So I need to double check what I'm doing. So I went back to school, start from scratch, prereq classes. Took prereq classes, took a gig at a trauma one hospital just to get a hands-on to figure it out, is this science thing for me? Is it what I want to do? Mm-hmm. And through that, my chemistry teacher discovered I was pretty good with chemistry. And he was like, there's this thing happening at the University of Minnesota. If you win it, it'll be great. And you can do any research that you want, PhD level research. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm trying to go to medical school. That's what I want to do. I don't want to do anything else. Your focus. Yeah. And I was like, I don't want to do that. He was like, okay, fine. And then once in a while you'd be like, I think you'll be really good for this, whatever. Once in a while, anyways, long story short, I got convinced to do it. So I did this experiment this experiment was pretty easy in my opinion. You just kind of do whatever experiment off the top of your head. I walked in the room. There's all these things on the table. And I picked the orange juice. So orange juice have hydrogen in it. Hydrogen in the orange juice, enough of them bouncing around and can create a little bit of electricity. So if you use copper wire, which have a conductor to it, you tie it around a nail, you can pull one end in the orange juice, take the other end, touch it in the clock with no battery, and make the hand move. Wow. I did that. I won that. Great. I was given the platform to do any kind of research that I wanted to do. And I picked cancer. I was like, cancer is something that I want to do. And everybody was like, this is much harder than you're thinking. I'm like, when I was in high school, I was reading about nanoparticle. Whatever this nano thing is, it's the reason why I'm in this building that says nano center on top of it. That's what I want to do. So I end up, I created a gold nanoparticle and quantum dots, which are two particles that I use to target cancer cell at the cellular level. So basically, long story short, I turn on cancer cells like a Christmas tree in the dark. So you can be able to actually see them imaging wise, because of course in the body is dark, pitch black, right? If you can see something easier, you can catch it. And that was why I wanted to go. The best treatment for any cancer, in my opinion, and in many research opinion, early diagnosis is the best treatment for any cancer. So for me, the hardest part of that, I discovered this thing. I'm doing this thing. The nano center is super excited about it. And then the person I call my dad is dying of cancer. And he's doing chemo because it wasn't ready yet to be used. And that level of dilemma and weight, every day I come home, he's excited about it. And he goes, what did you do? And I'm telling him, I'm writing down these equations, showing him, and he is a science guy, super excited about it. But it's not for him.
Yeah.
And that, to me, was the part that pushed me to say, you have to move faster. Really. You must move in a way that is precise, is direct, and is with force. Because if you take time off and whatever, people are living with these diseases, dying. Now, mind you, my parents were white. They weren't black. They had the money and the resources to go anywhere that they could. And my dad turned to me. He said, this thing is going to kill me. When he got admitted to MD Anderson Cancer Center, best cancer center in the world, in my opinion, they helped him live for like 9 years, basically.
Wow.
And even when he was going through that stuff, and he was grateful, he was going through it, and he was living. One day he turned to me, he goes, I always wonder about people who don't have access like this. Here's a guy that could have just like lived his life and not think about anybody else and be like, he just turned to me. He's like, I worried about people who are going through the same thing that don't have access to the thing I have access to just because of money. That's it. And I was like, well, that's horrible. Somebody need to change it. He goes, you are smart. You are driven. You're probably the best candidate to be doing this thing. You have more drive in you than anybody I've ever met. You should do this. And I was like, makes sense. Medical school, I'm going to go to. So I went to medical school. In medical school, things are going good. Love the process. Came across a patient, looked just like my grandma. Sorry, by the way. In 2020, I lost my dad. He died of cancer. Yeah. My grandma that raised me during the war died of diabetes complication. I will tell you about the device that I also made because of that. I lost my dad's sister, so my aunt died of lung cancer.
Oh man!
I lost my other grandmom. My mom's mom died of I think she had Alzheimer's complication. And then my best mate, who was with me at Regent's Hospital, his name is Chris Dell, super into science like me. He and I, we were on training one night, at the hospital late. He went, hey, got a heart attack. That's it. There was the only sign I could probably tell now looking back, the night that I saw him, he had a little bit of heavy breathing, slightly. That's it. That was it, slightly. So after those things happened in 2020, I'm like, medical school, we can't wait anymore.
All 2020?
Literally. Not of COVID. Everybody was dropping from COVID or whatever, which is horrible. But these people were dying from things that was separate of that. So all 2020, we were all isolated, all cramped up, fighting about going to a gym. crying about going to the gym. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, I
Crying
remember
for like
that.
bloody tissue paper. Yeah. So that was doing that. So I was like, you know what? And that was another thing too. I didn't deal with all those deaths. I just went to medical school, studying 17 hours a day minimum, which I
Wow.
loved. I loved studying about the body, great. But during that time, I am at the hospital and I came across this patient, a Black lady, looked like my grandmom, really lovely. You know, she's holding her left side. And I interview her and we talk. She's on my rotation, so I'm interviewing and talking to whatever. She gave me all her history and everything. I want to do like a physical examination, but she doesn't want to. She is against it. And I was like, okay, I don't want to push you, whatever. And then she's about to leave, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. I have an idea what I think it is, but I'm really concerned about like your left side. And she goes, you know, I've been to 6 different doctors, and they all just, some of them dismiss it, some of them give me like ibuprofen, whatever, nothing serious. And I was like, well, why, why didn't somebody do imaging or anything? She goes, honey, if you're a Black woman, and she just stopped. And I was like, if you're a Black woman, what? I didn't even know what that meant, because that was my first time in a space. Here's a Black woman that's gone through all these things, and she's just tired. You could see the fatigue on her. And she's like, honey, you've been so great. And I'm like, and she goes, Doc, you did great. And she leans over to give me a hug. And there's this black mark on her neck right here. That's the only reason why I knew what was happening. That black, it looked like a letter mark or whatever, like kind of like a black letter mark on her neck, whatever. And I was like, how long have you had this? And she goes, oh, I've had this for a while. And I was like, wow. She goes, okay, like a long time. And I'm like, you know what I'm afraid of? I think the mark on your neck is associated with the pain on your side. And she was like, what do you mean? I'm like, can we just do an image of your abdomen? And she was like, my insurance and all these things. And I was so overwhelmed. I was like, I will pay for it. We just need to figure it out. Whatever it is that's happening, I can't say. I want to make sure the image shows something. Anyways, she goes to do the imaging, The attendant come back, told me she was at stage 4 GI cancer.
Stage 4?
4 GI cancer. She had acanthosis nigricans. Okay, is a skin abnormality that shows up on like your fold. So like the back of your neck, like on your armpit, on like any fold, like your groin, or like the back of your leg, or whatever it is. This acanthosis nigricans is associated with type 2 diabetes, GI cancer, and other cancers. The people that she went to misdiagnosed her for whatever reason. It could be a bunch of reasons. One, it's hard to see a dark pigment or like a black thing on a black background. That is true. If you give a lot of your time, you could possibly notice something, right? Anyways, there are many reasons why, whatever it was. But she went to 6 different doctors, and some dismissed her. She was mixed diagnosed. 8 months after I saw that lady, she died.
So I hate to do it, but I got to do it. It was a really engaging conversation, but we ended up talking for almost an hour and a half. I thought that might be too long of one episode. I know there's some podcasters that have 2-hour, 2.5-hour long episode. Not this guy. I've had like a couple episodes are an hour, but an hour and a half, a little long. So with that, thank you for listening to this episode, but we will be back next week to finish it off. So I hope you enjoyed learning about Archie Karpeh and all the incredible things he has been doing, and especially how we talk about mental health and the importance of it at the beginning of this episode. We will continue it in the next episode. For now, digest what you've learned, Get your notepads ready. We dive into a lot of more incredible topics so that you can keep being incredible.
Be sure to rate and review this podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform. We'll see you here next time. And be incredible.